they would put you in this box.
Yeah.
Did they still do this?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so they put you in the box, and then they would basically just shout at you, get your head out of the box, get your head out of the box. And so obviously when he's later put in the leg irons, and then what they would call the rope, so they'd chain your legs and then they'd lift you by, you can imagine he's getting, like, I think one of the things he said they would have him do, I don't know if they still do this, I haven't gotten to this part yet, but like they would go like, okay, you're a 9-year-old boy and you're walking to school. Instead of thinking about what's happening to you right now, walk to school in your mind.
Interesting.
And so they're saying get out of the box, like don't be where you are, which is claustrophobic and horrible. You have to kind of transcend the situation.
Welcome to Change Agents, an Ironclad original presented by Firecracker Farm. I am joined today in person by Ryan Holiday, best-selling author, thinker, and one of the most influential voices bringing Stoic philosophy into modern life. Through books like The Obstacle is the Way and Ego is the Enemy, he has shown how ancient ideas can shape how we live, work, and lead today. Let's get into the show. What are you going to write next? I mean, you just finished up with Wisdom, so it seems like you've gone through the 4 cardinal principles.
Yes.
What's on the horizon?
No. So I did these 4 virtues. That was a project I started in 2019. So that was my sort of runway. And then I've got 2 other books that I've sort of vaguely thinking about. And then I'm doing right now a biography of Stockdale. So that's like my project.
That is an interesting project. The SEER school I went to was at the Admiral Stockdale facility in San Diego.
Yes. What's that stand for again?
Survival, Escape, Resistance, and Evasion.
Yeah. So he went to, I'm actually right where I am in the biography right now. He went to that school when he first got his wings.
Correct.
And then he asks if he can go back. Like he goes to Stanford, he gets a graduate degree from Stanford. And then afterwards he asks if he can go back, which was probably a good choice given that like 18 months later he gets shot down over North Vietnam.
I tell you what, a lot of the stuff they teach you there, it's very broad principles. There's something about him and his ability to tolerate the situation he was in as well, and what he brought with him with those tools. It's an interesting study.
Well, so he, the thing he gets most out of it, the first time he goes, they would put you in this box.
Yeah.
Did they still do this?
Oh, yeah.
So they put you in the box. And then they would basically just shout at you, get your head out of the box, get your head out of the box. And so obviously when he's later put in the leg irons and then what they would call the rope, so they'd chain your legs and then they'd lift you by, you can imagine he's getting, like, I think one of the things he said they would have him do, I don't know if they still do this, I haven't gotten to this part yet, but like they would go like, okay, you're a 9-year-old boy and you're walking to school. Instead of thinking about what's happening to you right now, walk to school in your mind.
Interesting.
And so they're saying get out of the box, like don't be where you are, which is claustrophobic and horrible. You have to kind of transcend the situation. So you can imagine. They did
cover that. It was through the lens. They talked about historical case studies of people who had made it through the Hanoi Hilton, and they came out with ultra realistic, complete diagrams of the home they wanted to make, or ways that they would. Intricate tile floor, things that they wanted to create. So they were trying to not live in the experience that they were going through.
Yeah, he would do like math because what's interesting about it is there would have been moments of punctuated horror and pain, and then just incredible amounts of boredom and monotony.
Yep.
Right. And so those are 2 different things you have to transcend. And so maybe in one of them you're doing mathematical proofs, and in other ones you are, walking yourself to school.
Are you going to go out to the school?
I'm going to have to go to the school. I have to go to the Hanoi Hilton, although they just built a replica of it at the Air Museum in Pensacola. So I'm going to go down there in a couple of weeks to see. They built a whole replica of all the cell blocks for the POWs.
You should definitely see if you could sit through some of the SEER curriculum.
I should. Yes. Yeah, so he's this fascinating guy because he's introduced to Stoic philosophy, and then he's like almost immediately shot down, and he's having to apply it there. But I'm fascinated with his it's not just like, on the other hand, like, so he learns a lot in that school. And then also, I think probably what you learned came out of those guys coming back and going, you didn't teach us shit, right? Like they were like
they framed the house, but they didn't put everything up.
Well, they, like Eisenhower had signed into like had put out these orders. It was like name, rank, serial number.
Yep.
Don't say anything else. And they just immediately figure out that that's not remotely plausible when you're in prison for 7.5 years and you're being tortured within an inch of your life. And so Stockdale, one of the things they do teach at the school was like, you have to, the most senior person has to take command.
Yes.
And so he has to take command, which you go, okay, he's in charge. He gets to tell people. No, he has to figure out if their orders are woefully insufficient, what are the orders? Because the guys are, they're tapping on the wall and they're like, what do we do? And he I think he finds, this is, I think, an interesting layer on it, because we tend to think of Stoicism as like unforgiving and strong. The main thing was they learned almost immediately that everybody breaks under torture. And then so the leadership role was not how do you prevent people from breaking under torture, but how do you prevent people from spiraling into a death loop because they broke under torture. Yeah. And he has to figure out like sort of forgiveness and reintegration for these guys. Like obviously there's a difference. There was a couple of collaborators in the camp that those guys
different story.
Fuck those guys.
Yeah.
But his point was, you're John McCain and you signed those things, and now you want to kill yourself because you believed you betrayed your country. Yeah. And he's having to say, no. You did what any human being would do. Now how do you? And so like the big thing he works out that I think is so interesting is like, he was like, name, rank, serial number, you're going to have to go beyond that. But he was like, there's a price tag for everything. And so it's like, this is what you get for a week of torture. Like he was like, you had to make them work for it.
Yeah. And then you return back to the center.
Yes.
Yeah. The part of you have to be elastic. Like they can push you to the point, you give what you want, and they used to always call it getting back in your box or getting back in your circle. Interesting. Yes.
And what does that mean?
So again, there's those core things that you can talk about. So I went to the basic SEER school in the Navy, and then I went to a high-risk SEER school for people in JSOC level commands.
Yeah.
Which was more interrogation.
Sure.
I wouldn't say survival, but I would almost say survival. Because an interrogator not using torture can trip you up in your head almost as much as you getting the living shit beat out of you.
We almost have learned techniques that make torture somewhat rudimentary at this point.
So when you're in your circle, you're controlling the information that's coming out. You're answering the questions in the way that you want to, but you're going to fuck up at some point. You might
get angry, you get tired,
exhausted, sleep deprived, all of those things at once. What do you do if you get out of your circle? You've got to get back into it. So it's this unwillingness because I made that one mistake. Oh, you got me, guys. Yes, it's right back into the circle. And then you can start and there's it's probably open source, but like you can answer in very vague manners. You can pretend to not understand there's ways that you can slow the process down and control how you stay in your circle, which might terminate with them baseball batting your toes if you piss off too much. But again, if you go out of that, you go back in.
Yeah, or what is harmless information you can give it. Correct. So let me ask you, because this is the thing that I know I'm ultimately going to have to wrestle with in the book that I don't quite. Okay, so the thing about Stockdale is like, as opposed to say John McCain or Dave Carey, who sat in that chair, was one of the POWs. The average POW had a certain amount of information. Yeah. Like they knew, hey,
all of which with an expiration date, by the way.
Right. And the longer they got in, this is what the captors didn't understand. The longer they got in, the more worthless totally. What most of them, because they didn't even know, like the carriers had returned home, the things had changed, the people had been cycled out. But so your average fighter pilot knows, how many planes are on a carrier, here's how they fly this, or here's the number of bombs on this kind of plane. Stockdale is in the Gulf of Tonkin the night of the incident. And he's very clear, even at the time, that nothing happens. He was like, we were shooting at ghosts. Like, he was like, this didn't happen. Yeah. And then the government uses it as a pretext for the escalation in the war. So he basically is in possession of the single most valuable piece of propaganda that you could have possibly imagined. So I'm trying to wrap my head around what because that's different. Do you know what I mean? Like, and it's not just it's not like, hey, he knows the nuclear codes, which would be one heavy level of like a burden. Like, hey, I know. And there was one guy in the Hanoi Hilton who doesn't collaborate and he doesn't participate in it. He was like, I know too much. But so he's like, I gotta do my own time. I don't want to be subjected. And his point was like, he knew like just basic military secrets and he wanted to sort of whatever. And Stockdale's kind of understanding of this. But what Stockdale has is not that. Like, hey, I know this is the best way to shoot down a skyhawk. He's like, no, I know my government did something wrong. And if the enemy were to get this from me, it would be the propaganda coup of all coups. And so I'm trying to think about what that would do to you, to your psyche, and then also how you would come back to your circle, as you're saying, knowing that like, oh shit, there's this thing that I can't allow out.
Yeah. I don't actually have an answer for that question because I've never had to live through that. And
right,
I feel like
very few people have.
And you could hypothesize until you're blue in the face, but until you actually shoulder that burden and you're staring at this feeling unable to sleep and questioning who you are and what you believe, I don't think you can answer that.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no training you could undergo for that specific kind of secret because
that would be a very unique course.
You're having to admit that do you know what I'm saying? And then so and then it makes it all the more remarkable, of course, that he doesn't, like, you also think about like what when they try to flip someone, what they try to do is disillusion you about your country. Like they were like, look at this, they're trying to exploit that uncertainty or that crack in the armor. And so
I bet they never directly asked him about it because they didn't know what to ask.
No, they didn't. But what I'm saying is that he's feeling that.
Well, I'm curious what his response would have been had they directly asked him about it.
Yeah.
Because he was holding on to something that was valuable, but they didn't know that he had it.
Right.
So would this be a different story if they had some inclination and they would have used that propaganda? What they needed though was somebody to be the spokesman for it.
Right.
Unknown questions.
I know. It's very interesting. And that's what to me, that's, it's one thing to endure this torture and this isolation, whatever. That's what you sign up for at some level, but then it's different
conceptually.
Right. That's a feat of physical strength.
Yeah.
Right. And then the moral weight and complication of having this terrible secret that not just your enemy would want you to divulge, but a significant percentage of the population, the anti-war part of the population, who, by the way, was largely correct in the sense that, like they would want it, and then
I would like to believe the pro-war side would want it as well, because at the end of the day, there's a time and place to go to war, but you have to do it based off of accurate, legitimate information.
Yeah. It's like, what would the equivalent be? It'd be like if someone on Colin Powell's staff gets taken. Here's
the equivalent. Colin Powell standing up in front of NATO saying that Iraq has weapons of mass destruction. I was on the team that actioned the #1 chem bio target in Iraq. It was an agricultural school.
Yeah.
That was one of the main reasons that I think that's what it would feel like. And I would love to sit down with Colin Powell and have a little chat.
Yeah. But and imagine if that's it's like you're knowing, and then so that's it's like, it's like I can insult my brother, but you can't. Yeah. Right. And so it's like he knows this and he has a problem with it, but then he's not going to tell this fucking person because
of the cascading downstream consequences.
Yes. And also because what it would do to the other guys on the cell block. Right. Yep. And so it's this just endlessly fascinating moral quandary that, again, I think we've totally missed with him because we primarily think about it as the enduring the
existential story of survival, just quintessential.
Yes. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is full on holiday season. So if you're still looking for an awesome gift that actually has some substance, I highly recommend Firecracker Farm Hot Salt. It's a product that I personally use every day and I can stand behind it. Delicious really is an understatement. It has the perfect heat to flavor ratio that you can fully control and elevates everything you put it on, from eggs to steak to chicken, or even something as simple as pasta that you may not traditionally think about putting salt on. The gear is solid too. It comes in a really nice, well-built stainless steel push grinder that feels right in your hand. It has a great tactile quality that makes it super satisfying to use, and I'm telling you, you're going to want this thing, and it makes an awesome gift. The best part is, when you buy one, you're supporting a small American family business, and you're buying something that's truly high quality that you'll use every single day. Alex and his family have put a ton of love and dedication into this product, and I'm not the only one that recognizes a good thing when I see it. You can now find this product at Black Rifle Coffee locations, to include the one here in Kalispell. That should tell you everything that you need to know about the quality of the people and the product. There's one small catch. You are not going to find this on Amazon last minute. They make hot salt in small batches, and inventory goes very quickly. So if you want this, you need to make your move now. They are going to sell out. Head over to firecracker.farm and use the code Ironclad, all one word, all caps, at checkout for 10% off of your order. Do it now, and you're going to be the holiday hero. Thank you later. That is firecracker.farm. I am slightly fascinated how you came from a background in marketing and landed more in a place of stoicism. Now,
yeah, they don't exactly go together typically.
I feel like they're the opposite. And so I have no traditional education in marketing, but as the consumer or somebody who's constantly bombarded with it, it feels like it is designed to hit you, invoke an emotional reaction, get you to take action on that emotional reaction, especially if they want you to buy something before your logical brain can kick in, of which I've done many times, by the way. That is the opposite of my understanding of stoicism. So I'm just fascinated how you went from one world and found yourself in the other world.
Well, look, there's definitely parts of marketing that are, and public relations, that are transparently manipulative, right? Yeah. And that's not great. I wrote a book about sort of that, right?
Yes.
Which is ultimately why I sort of walked away from that world. But then there are other parts of marketing, like you have a show, you think what you do is good, and you want people to hear it.
Yes.
And marketing is the act of getting people who would like what you do to otherwise, and maybe otherwise wouldn't have found out about it, to find out about it. So I don't think it's a wholly dishonorable profession.
Yeah.
Right.
Which isn't what I'm claiming.
No.
I'm
just saying, like, it's a job like any other job, and it's an important job in the sense that people have great stuff and they want people to know about it. And also the not great stuff is competing for attention with the other stuff out there. And sometimes those people are the best marketers. And so I think that I was attracted to the idea of, like, hey, how do you take an idea or a thing or a product, brand, or whatever it is that people should know about? How do you get them to know about it? That's what attracted me to that world initially. And it's exciting and interesting. And there is something really exhilarating about having an idea for something, or hearing about something you believe in, and then all of a sudden it's on the front of the New York Times, or it's being talked about everywhere. Or it's, we're like, to be able to kick off word of mouth, which is one person earnestly recommending something that they like, is a really powerful, important thing. And so that's what attracted me to that world. I wasn't in, sort of direct response, scam marketing. I worked for brands and authors and different people whose stuff that I liked. And I think there's something to that. Like if artists and creators and brands and nonprofits and leaders were better at articulating why their thing deserves to be known by people, and more skilled at this art of sort of persuasion and public opinion, I think we live in a better world. The problem is, like, the worst people are the best at marketing, and the best people are the worst at marketing, and that's why we have the political choices we have. Yeah. That's why people like one thing when actually they don't even know about this whole other world that's even better. So that's what I was attracted to, and then ultimately I sort of found that's I didn't sort of like what was going on beyond the curtain, and I wrote this book, Trust Me, I'm Lying, with sort of an expose of that world. But I was always interested in and sort of personally trying to apply Stoicism in my life. And I liked it. And I found it was an example of one of these things we're talking about. Like when someone recommended to me Mark Aurelius's Meditations, and I read it and I thought, wait, this is philosophy? Because that's not what the brand philosophy is. That's not what I thought philosophy is. That's not the philosophy I was taught in college either. I was like, this is what people need to know about. And so after that marketing book, I was like, they were like, what do you want to do next? And I think my publisher thought I would just write more books about marketing and make a living talking and teaching and consulting in this fairly lucrative space. That's just not what I wanted to spend my actual life doing. It was fun and exhilarating in my 20s, but like what I actually wanted to do was talk about this thing. And so they came together in that I then was able to, like when I went to my publisher and said, I want to write about an obscure school of ancient philosophy, this is the marketing problem that we're talking about. You know, they were like, that'll sell 15 copies, you know? So I got to take the things that I learned selling, you know, different things, and I got to apply it to these ideas from the ancients. And I think that's in part why Stoicism is more popular now than it was in 2012 when I was kicking around these ideas.
I was going to ask you that. Do you feel like the concept of Stoicism is gaining in popularity, in utilization? Because popularity is one thing. I'm glad that people would know about it. The utilization in their real life, as you know, is where the rubber meets the road.
Well, objectively, it is more popular. Like it is more known than it was. That you know, is sort of there in the sales data. Like if you look at the translations of Marcus Aurelius and Seneca and Epictetus, they're like the graph is like, you know, like this. So that's cool and exciting. That's what I set out to do. Like that, I was like, more people should know about this stuff. Yeah. And several years later, more people know about this stuff. So that is true. Are people applying it more? Certainly a percentage of the, if 1 million people know about something and 10% of them are applying it in real life, that's a huge number. Are they all doing it? No. And I'm not always doing it. It's a struggle. So I think the other thing you layer on top of this is, you know, I think most of us would kill to go back to 2012, right? Like things seemed more stable. And like, I think
I'm trying to remember what I was doing in 2012.
You know, I mean, in between now and 2012, there was a global pandemic. There was, you know, there's all sorts of destabilizing. I think it seems like a distant past at this point. So some of the things that we took for granted then are, you know, obviously in flux now. And so I think you layer on top of that global chaos, economic uncertainty, political dysfunction, even massive technological disruption like AI. And there's a reason that could explain most of Stoicism's resurgence right there, is that it is a philosophy designed for uncertain, unstable, disorienting times. And it always has been. Yeah. I think we sometimes think of the ancient world as this like peaceful, idyllic place where they walked around in togas, as if there wasn't the constant threat of being invaded, conquered, and sold into slavery, as if you couldn't die from a cut on your finger.
I was going to say with a life expectancy of 35.
Yes. And not just life expectancy, like infant mortality was like shockingly high, and life was brutal and uncomfortable and uncertain. And you could be thrown into exile. Like political disagreement wasn't like you lose an election. It was like you get sent into exile. And so it was a rough place, right? And we, of course, remember the statues and the beautiful marble buildings, but it was a scary place. And so these philosophies were designed to make sense of that world. And so that is why you tend to see it reemerge in modern times. And again, you have to remember it's always been modern times. Like Socrates doesn't think that he lives in the past. He lives in the most advanced time in human history.
Yeah, cutting edge of the day.
As of everyone who's followed him. And so that's why people have been turning to this philosophy for 25 or so centuries.
Today's episode is brought to you by Hollow Socks. let me give you some insight into your average guy. Your average dude, especially an outdoorsman, but we'll use a hunter based off where I live in Montana, will spend at least $10K on a full setup. $2,000 on a scope, $3,000 on a hunting rifle, and maybe that much on a lease. $1,000 in camo, all the scent blocking products. But if you were to ask them to spend 40 or 50 bucks for the best pair of hunting socks that money can buy, they're going to ignore it. And they're going to wonder why their feet are clammy and cold and they are uncomfortable all day long. This is where Hollow socks come in. These are alpaca socks built for the field. These are performance grade socks made from ultra soft baby alpaca fibers, engineered for rugged conditions and designed to keep your feet dry, warm, and comfortable no matter where your day may take you. They're the only socks that will keep your feet warm below freezing and then cooled off when it hits 80 degrees. For a limited time, Hollow Socks is having a buy two, get two free sale. Head to hollowsocks.com today to check it out. That is hollowsocks.com for up to 50% off of your order. After your purchase, they will ask you where you heard about them. You can support the show by telling them that we sent you. Totally hypothetical question, but how do you think the Stoics, these recognized Stoics, would survive in the modern era? Because we have some things, again, they were, what you described is completely correct. Yeah. What they were living in, the first printed coin, like, my God, this is the most technologically advanced thing ever. Yeah. So, and that's true. For where they were living, it was cutting edge. I feel like, and I have no data to support this, it's only anecdotal through my own eyes, but I feel like we are being bombarded with things that the human species isn't really designed to handle. For example, what I like to call cell phones, anxiety rectangles, because we can't not have it with us, but if you pick it up, you now all of a sudden, I don't feel like there's any more natural disasters in existential crisis going on in the world, but now I have it at my fingertips.
Yes, about more. There are more, like you think about Marcus Aurelius, he's the emperor of Rome. You think about how stressful that position is.
Yeah.
Because not only are all these people responsible for him, but he's just having to make decisions all the time. He's bombarded with more information than a human could handle. And then, like, if I showed him my iPhone, his brain would explode. This is more information than the most powerful person in the world, ruling over 50 million people, would experience over the course of a life, let alone, and you could have that at your fingertips before your feet touch the floor for the first time. And so, yes, there is more. At the same time, he's also feeling distracted and stressed. Like, I think it's new and worse, but it's also the same and always has been the same. So
do you think they would recognize the bombardment and then treat it as what it is, a tool that could be used for great, but also it could distract you from the actual important things?
Yeah, and there's a line from Blaise Pascal, the philosopher in the 1500s, that I think about. He says, all of humanity's problems stem from our inability to sit quietly in a room alone. And so you go, maybe it's not the phone that's the problem. You know, like, the common variable in all these societies is us.
I saw this yesterday on the flight down here.
Yeah.
There was almost a mid-air emergency, and by that I mean the Wi-Fi wasn't working. And the person sitting next to me physically couldn't sit still. And I'm not here to judge anybody. I don't know what was going on in their life. They might have been a high-level CEO and were...
They could have been waiting for important news about their kid that just got in an accident.
However, right before we took off, they were screen grabbing hot chicks on Instagram and putting them into their folder, which, again, no judgment, live your life how you want. But he almost came unwound in 2.5 hours. Yeah. And I was so happy.
Yeah.
Not that he would, well, if I'm being 100% honest, I was slightly happy that he was becoming unwound.
That's the screen you were watching.
I like the quiet.
Yeah.
And man, I think it's helpful, but there's truth to that quote. I think it has more to do with the person than it does the tools we have access to.
Well, it's a muscle you have to develop. It's a skill. And so I guess my point is, in ancient Rome, if you were that guy, you would have just found slightly less scalable, technological driven ways to remain not quietly in a room alone. You would have found endless distractions. You would have been gossiping or going to the Colosseum or, pacing nervously, you would have found something to be stressed about. And that is the striking thing. You read the Stoics, like Seneca talks about people who, he says, he's talking about these wealthy Romans who are traveling from resort to resort, event to event, trying to find happiness. He's like, it's like flipping the pillow over in bed, trying to get to the cool side of it. And it never lasts. And you go, okay, nothing is fucking changed in 2,000 years, right? Yeah. And that's always been there. And to not be debilitated by it or enslaved by it requires deliberate practice and some self-awareness and some restraint. And when I fly, I almost never buy Wi-Fi, not just because it's like insanely expensive for some. It's like, wait, it's $40 for 2 hours in the air.
$79.99 for a one-day
these
pass.
Are like Las Vegas prices for a bottle of water or something. But I just go, this is an opportunity to not be connected. And how am I going to spend that? And I try to read, or I sometimes just try to sit there, or I have little kids, so I sleep. I try to use that time productively as opposed to how do I, numb out during that time. But that's a practice, that requires strength. And I do think it's worth investing in because life is going to put you in those positions from time to time. I like to swim, and one of the things I love about swimming is although sometimes you do see people, there's like those underwater headphones. I go, this is like the one place in the planet that your screen can't reach you yet. And and you are striving to find a way to make that not so. And I think having those places in your life is the ancient word for this was ataraxia, or a freedom from disturbances. And how do you cultivate that kind of stillness in your life? I think it's really, really important, because to me, that's where good ideas come from. That's where peace and contentment comes from. That's where gratitude comes from. It's when the mind is not racing. You got to cultivate that in your life.
I've had phases in my life where I was less comfortable with the quiet, and I would have been the person searching for that external noise. And looking back now, getting closer to 50 than I am 40 at this point, I realize that those were the times in my life where I had my own bullshit going on that I needed to deal with that I wasn't dealing with.
Yes.
And not that I do not want to make the claim that I'm an expert at working on all of my bullshit. I got 3 suitcases full that I travel with. Mm-hmm. But the better I do with addressing those things, the more I can actually tolerate sitting still, the more I can be in the quiet, and it doesn't bother me.
Yeah. What are you running from? Or what are you
usually myself
to not? Yeah. What are you trying to not think about?
Yeah.
That's sort of the constant battle. And I think, journaling as a practice is a good way to do that. Therapy is a good way to do that. The idea, I think, people tend to think of philosophy as this abstract theoretical thing where you're talking about, does good and evil exist? Or, where did we come from? Like these big questions. And it can be, but I think it's best seen as working on yourself so you can sit quietly in a room alone.
How do you expose this? So my kids are older. They vaguely remember. Actually, only my 2 oldest. My daughter doesn't remember a world without electronics. I graduated high school in 96. I distinctly remember the first time I sat down in front of a computer. It was a computer class in high school.
Yeah, sure.
And I remember thinking, this is so stupid. This is never going to go anywhere. I've had
That's why you're not a technology investor.
Oh, no. If I could go back in time, I would just tell myself to invest in Bitcoin. But I don't think I would even listen to myself if I went back in time.
Or you would have immediately sold it when it went up the first 1,000% because
I would have made like $8.
Yes, exactly.
I'd have been the guy who paid, it was like 108 Bitcoins for the pizza, which is worth, But I remember a distinct world pre-internet, pre-smartphone. My 2 oldest kind of vaguely do. Your kids are born into a world where this exists. So how do you, as a parent, how do you have these conversations with them? Is it more you're trying to model your behavior with this? In introducing these Stoic concepts in a world that honestly, by design or not, it almost seems like they are at odds with each other.
What it is, we lecture our kids about screen time and then use our screens all the time, right? Like when I go, hey, we're not doing iPads anymore today. And my son's like, what? I see one in your hand, and so that obviously is a huge problem. I think, it's harder to go, yeah, my brain's already developed, dude. Like it's a little different. But what I try to do is I try to use the things that they're interested in as a segue into the real world where this stuff actually exists and is much more interesting. You know what I mean? So it's like they're watching a Mr. Beast video where he's here. I'm like, let's go there.
It's interesting.
And so I try to use the flicker of interest, of which the internet is an incredible tool for discovery and exposure. And then I try to use that as a way to kindle, interest in actual stuff. And I go, hey, there's books about this or whatever. It's funny, like the only two things my kids are impressed by are those two YouTube plaques on the wall, because it's like it's like the one area that my world intersects with the things that they care about.
Venn diagram overlap.
Yeah, but then it's like, hey, this person that you like watching play video games, do you understand that they're an entrepreneur and like that this is a job?
Yeah.
And that like, not just, it's a job, it would be fun to make YouTube videos all day, but how do you think that works? So I try to take I try to meet them where they are and use that as a chance to connect them to the stuff that is a little bit more practical and educational.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. For parents, get ready. The Venn diagram overlap, paper thin.
Yes.
And by that, I mean a paper turned on its side, not laid out in front of you like a chart paper.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a journey. Today's episode is brought to you by DeleteMe. We have talked a lot about people getting caught in timeshare scams, falling for pig butchering schemes, or getting those mysterious text messages that you have no idea where they came from. I've spoken with guests who hunt hackers and work to protect people's personal information. But here's the thing. Your data, your personal data, your name, your address, your phone number, even your relatives' names can be bought and sold online by data brokers, putting you at risk for identity theft, scams, and harassment. Now, that is why we have partnered with DeleteMe. Like the experts we've had on the show who actively stop hackers and scammers, DeleteMe works behind the scenes to remove your personal information from hundreds of people search and data broker sites. They do it continuously, securely, and without outsourcing. Plus, real privacy advisors are available for custom requests, so you're never on your own. DeleteMe has been the leading service for removing personally identifiable information for over 15 years. They verify your data is actually on these sites before requesting removal, reducing unnecessary exposure. Wirecutter named them the #1 service of its kind, and judges, journalists, creators, and podcasters all trust DeleteMe to protect their privacy. Nowadays, this isn't just a nice to have. I feel like it's an essential. And DeleteMe makes it super easy. Just create your account, enter in your basic information on the dashboard, and they're going to do the rest. Within about a week, the first report arrives showing exactly what has been removed. Take control of your digital privacy today at joindeleteme.com/ironclad and use the coupon code Ironclad, all one word, all uppercase. You can also scan the QR code to get started. It's one of the few services actively keeping your personal information out of the wrong hands. Okay, so your most current book is about wisdom. Walk me through the books you've written before this one, ending with wisdom, because wisdom is a tough topic, man.
Yes. I mean, look, so I did this series on the cardinal virtues. So the 4 virtues of Stoicism are courage, discipline, or temperance, justice, and wisdom. So I've done this 4-book series over the last 6 years. The final one being wisdom. It's interesting. So Zeno, who's the founder of Stoicism, he basically says they're distinct but inseparable, which I think is an interesting way of like all of the virtues. Each of the virtues is different and its own sort of set of traits or behaviors or values. And yet, if you separate them from each other, or you have one without the other, it ceases to matter much. So courage, right? The courage to rush out onto the battlefield, right? To put oneself at risk is obviously a virtue. It's an important thing, but justice informs what battles you're fighting, right? And being courageous in pursuit of a unjust or even an evil cause, suddenly the shine on that virtue rubs off pretty quickly. Yeah. And then it's like, okay, is justice just what feels right? or does wisdom layer on top of that? How do you know, what the right cause is? How do you know not just what is the right war to be fighting, but how are you picking your battles in that war? Now you have the, wisdom or competence or insight or understanding and intelligence, all of these things. So the virtues are these interrelated ideas. So it's been a really difficult, but I think challenging in a good way series to do, because I had to think about how they all inform each other. But that's what I've been writing about, what the Stoics would call the cardinal virtues. And when people hear cardinal, they think, because the Catholicism shares the same cardinal virtues, they think it's a religious term. But cardinal comes from the Latin cardos, or like pivotal. So the idea is like, these are the things that you base your life around. And so famously, the Stoics are saying that, like, basically, it doesn't matter what happens to you in life. Every situation is a chance to apply one or more of these virtues. And so their belief was like, nothing bad can happen to you, only the opportunity to practice a virtue.
That goes into the category of easier said than done
sometimes. Sure, all of it goes into these. But you're like, oh yeah, actually, it not only is that true, but actually the harder it is to do,
the more you get,
the more virtuous it is, right? Like when we say like if it wasn't dangerous, like, we're not talking about courage, right? Like, if everyone agreed that it was the right thing, probably wouldn't need to be done. It'd already be done. And so, if it was easy, if you just naturally wanted to do it, like if hard work was fun, like, well, it's probably not hard anymore. So like discipline. So the virtue comes into play, I think, in the sense that it requires some willpower, sacrifice, strength, that it is easier to say than do. But the whole point is that you do it. Like, I think sometimes also because of what virtue, the connotation of virtue in today's world, which tends to be pejorative, like we'd say virtue signaling or social justice warrior, whatever. Virtue is not something you are. Like, you are not virtuous. Virtue is something you do. Like that all of these virtues, this goes back to Aristotle, but all these virtues are verbs rather than nouns. Mm-hmm. Like, we think of justice as this thing that's inscribed over the top of a courthouse, as that's the place you go to get virtue, to get justice, as if it's owed to you, as opposed to justice being something that you do in your life. Like, you may or may not get it from the legal system, from politics. In fact, you probably won't. And this is why we say life is not fair. Yeah. But life being fair or unfair is independent to whether you act or treat people fairly. And that's what the virtues that we're talking about are.
So how would you define wisdom? Because I was thinking about this on the drive over. It's tough to actually put a tight grip around.
I think at some level, understanding that it's not something you put a tight grip around is not the first step, but one of the facets of wisdom. Like if you're like, give me a definition, you're already missing the point. Like, wisdom is intelligence and creativity and insight, and wit and experience and emotional intelligence, perspective, and like 50 other things. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. It's all of these things and more. And it's a thing. It's not a checklist. And if you cross off 7 of them, you're a wise, 7 out of 10, you're a wise person. 5 out of 10, you're approaching wisdom. And, 1 out of 10,
great online course to sell.
Yeah, that's the opposite of what it is, right? It's this thing that you are approaching but never actually touch. It's a thing that you can have more of than you had before, but never actually have all of, right? Like, it's something like the horizon. Like, you definitely move towards it in the sense that you look behind you and you go, I'm a mile from where I started, and yet it's as far from you as it will always be. And so I think wisdom is this. I think if your goal is to get wise, you're doing it wrong. If your goal is to get wiser, you're somewhere closer to what the definition of wisdom is.
Do you think you can have wisdom without age, or are they hand in hand?
Well, they're not hand in hand in the sense that there are a lot of stupid old people.
That is one of the more accurate statements I've ever heard.
And there's a lot of, I think every once in a while you'll meet a person who's wise beyond their years.
Yeah.
So I think wisdom is something that should go along with age or go along with experience, time on this planet, but it is not necessarily true that it will be. So like if you are getting older and not wiser, that is a problem. But just because you are getting older doesn't mean you're getting wiser.
Yep.
In fact, and there's probably some sort of bell curve where, most people are getting wiser, and then as they get older, because they cease to learn or they become, they start to have the impression that they are wise, that they know more.
Dunning-Kruger effect.
There is something about wisdom that the more you think you have it, the further you're getting away from it. And I think the more, like Socrates' wisdom is rooted in that he doesn't know. Like he knows that he doesn't know. Mm-hmm. And I think one of the you meet older people who are humble and open and curious, and that Zen story about the wait and see. Do you know this one?
Yeah.
That there's that wisdom that comes with age. Like You've just seen so much, you're like, whoa, hang on, I'm gonna withhold judgment because we don't know yet. That can be a function of age. And then you meet a lot of old people and you're like, I've done this for 50 years. I know exactly how it's gonna go. And that is not the wisdom that we're talking about.
How do you, in nearly 2026, how do you apply Stoicism in your day-to-day with young kids? Because let me just tell you it's funny how your brain helps you by forgetting painful times in your life. Otherwise, I don't think women would have multiple children.
Yes.
But, I remember kids of that age, and the struggles of life are real. They're not always as existential as people make them out to be, but there are plenty of opportunities in everyday life to apply these Stoic philosophies. I'm just curious how you, as somebody who has studied it very deeply, written about it, advocates for it. How do you do it in your personal life?
I mean, that's where I try to do it. I think obviously it's a philosophy that comes from, the ancient world. It's been applied in these great crises or these, incredible lives of people who went through unbelievable, unimaginable adversity, Admiral James Stockdale and the Hanoi Hilton.
Yeah.
This is where he's testing Stoicism, as he says, in the laboratory of human experience. It definitely works there. We've had people go through it and report back to us, right? Yeah. But I think it's also for what I imagine was a rough travel day yesterday.
Rougher for some, apparently.
But you're just like, hey, this is... you don't decide how many air traffic controllers there are, and you don't decide whether your flight takes off on time or not.
Yep.
You don't decide whether the driver in front of you knows what they're doing or not. You don't control whether they make your sandwich right at the place you went to lunch, and you don't control, if you feel a cold coming on. Like, you don't control so much of what happens. And I think if we see Stoicism as much a philosophy for the ups and downs of that part of life, and not just this thing you reserve for the accident where your arm gets cut off, you're probably actually closer to what it's made for. So I mean, that's how I try to apply it. And I don't do it perfectly, but I certainly look back to where I was before I knew these things. And then I look back at where I was last year and I go, I'm inching towards getting better at it. So it's, how much are you focused on what's in your control or not? How much are you taking personally or not? How aware are you of the ephemerality or the shortness of life and the value of time? How patient and understanding are you being of other people? How are you holding yourself to sort of those high standards, as we're talking about a virtue of courage and discipline and justice and wisdom? That's, to me, what Stoicism is and how I'm trying to apply it. And I try to apply it like in my life as a father, as my life as a husband, as a person, making my way through the world. And then also like as a writer, like in my job, I like being done with writing. but like, and sometimes when I'm in like a flow state, I like being in it,
Yeah.
but I don't like starting. And it takes discipline every day,
Yeah.
you know, like the discipline to go, hey, this is what I have to cross off the list today. And actually, I don't have to. Like, I told myself I would, and am I going to keep my word to myself or not? That's both stoicism and just being a pro at what you do. And so that's kind of what it's, to me, all about.
I think it's about the little steps. I think, you know, slightly making fun of the online courses, you know, and I don't mean to, because there's some that are out there that are meaningful. But again, as somebody who's on the receiving end of the marketing of these things, it's what problem do you have in life doesn't matter, because I have the complete and total solution here, and it's going to be in an app. And maybe that's the case. I haven't found it yet, nor have I done a lot of deep dive into using these apps. But the way you're talking about it, the smaller steps, the small accumulation of volume over time to build that foundation, I think that is the key.
Yeah, like I notice as a writer, like the questions people ask are always like, you know, what software do you use? Or like, how do I get an agent? Like they're always obsessed with like the tools or like the trappings of it, as if 95% of it isn't sitting in the fucking chair and doing it like a lot of days in a row. That's the secret, right? And people are like, yeah, I got that, but I want to know about this thing. And part of the reason they want to know about this thing is because that's more exciting and easier, and it's a distraction from this thing. And have you read Stephen Pressfield's stuff about the resistance? It's like everything is a battle against the resistance. And I do think there, like, you know, Stephen Pressfield basically says we have the higher self and the lower self. And there's a passage in Marcus Aurelius' Meditations that I think addresses this, where he says, you know, he says, fight to be the person that philosophy tried to make you. And so it's like, here's what the aspiration is, the ideal, what we know. And then here's what we would like to get away with. And like the work is in the struggle between here and there.
Narrowing the gap.
And it's the day-to-dayness of that, right? It's not this. And like, if you do it today, it helps you tomorrow in the sense that you might have some momentum. But it also doesn't help you tomorrow at all, because you're starting from scratch tomorrow. Like it's not, did you do it once and then you are virtuous? Like going to the gym today is not what makes you a disciplined person. Discipline is the everydayness of it, right? Yeah. And the second you stop is the second you're not disciplined anymore.
Hard truth.
And so like it's the doing. It's the verb versus the noun in basically all things.
Today's episode is brought to you by Mizzen and Main. I tell you what, this was a wild one when this organization reached out to sponsor the show, because I have actually been wearing their product for the better part of a decade. I spend a good portion of every year traveling the world doing public speaking, and the only clothes that I wear when I do so are Mizzen and Main. They look amazing, incredibly professional, but they are by far the most comfortable professional/athletic technology wear that I have ever worn. Mizzen and Main makes classic menswear with performance fabrics, so it's effortless to look sharp and feel great. The shirts and pants, they look very refined, yet they are stretchy, lightweight, moisture wicking, wrinkle resistant, and completely machine washable, so no ironing or dry cleaning is required. These things are super easy to travel with as well. Mizzen and Main is a veteran-led organization committed to supporting those who have served. They offer a year-round military discount and proudly give back to veteran organizations. Right now, Mizzen and Main is offering our listeners 20% off your first purchase at mizzenandmain.com. Promo code Ironclad20. That is all one word, all uppercase. Mizzenandmain.com, promo code Ironclad20. And if you'd rather shop in person, you can find Mizzen and Main in stores in select states. So here's a ridiculous author question, and this is just how my brain works.
Okay.
So my understanding of Marcus Aurelius, essentially the works that are now published of his were his journal.
The work. It's the only thing. Yes.
But he never got to live to the point where it got resold so many times. Who's getting the royalties from his book?
Well, it's not just that he didn't. It's not just that he didn't live. It's that he didn't want it to be published. Almost certainly, there's something remarkable about one of the best-selling works of philosophy. One of the greatest, I think, works of human creation is so specific that it becomes universal, and so unperformative that it becomes relatable and timeless. Like, as a writer, obviously you're trying to say what you think, but there's this other part of you that's like, well, what are they? You know, there's an audience, right? Yep. You're not doing it. If you would do it differently if there was no audience. And so there is something pure and raw and real about the most powerful person in the world just writing to themselves. Now, maybe we don't know. We could find in some lost scroll, you know, as they excavate Pompeii, and it turns out, you know, maybe not Pompeii. But the point is, we could find our understanding of this could change at some point in the future. But as far as we know, it wasn't intended for publication, and there's no sort of performative element to it. And that's what makes it a unique thing. So who gets the rights?
Do they look for some long lost family member?
No. So it's in the public domain in that it's 2,000 years old. But each subsequent translation counts as a new work of intellectual property.
Oh, interesting.
So like I think the best translation of Meditations is the Gregory Hayes translation for the Modern Library, which is the one that I read when I was 19 years old. And that was done by this guy, Gregory Hayes, who's a professor at the University of Virginia. So Penguin Random House or the Modern Library commissions that translation. You know, he got paid either a flat amount or a royalty, and then they own that right. So like, you can't take that edition. Yeah. You could take the 1888 George Long translation, and that's free because it's I think it's 7 years. It's like the life. I don't know. It's like 70 plus 7 or something like that. It's like 70-ish years. Like The Great Gatsby just came back into the public domain.
Really?
So it's about that long.
Okay.
I forget the exact. I'm not a copyright lawyer, but the idea is a translation is an interpretation of an text that's in the public domain.
So counted as
it counts as a new thing. So that's who. So each one you read, depending on how good the translation is, if it's a modern one, then that means there was a modern translate. Like the Daily Stoic, I worked with my my collaborator Stephen Hanselman, so that has all new translations. Someone can't just take all those and put it in a new edition. But so that's how that works.
I feel like Marcus would have an amazing yacht if he was still around.
I don't know if he needed money, being the ruler of the known world.
Okay, that's a good point. He probably had his face on money,
and he definitely also he does. I have a bunch of the coins there.
Hope you enjoyed the episode. If you would like to learn more about Ryan's ideas, you can check out his latest book, Wisdom Takes Work. Learn, apply, and repeat. I added the and. Thank you again for listening to Change Agents, an Ironclad original, presented by Firecracker Farm. See you all next week with an all-new guest and an all-new episode. Good morning, everybody. As you know, Change Agents is an Ironclad original, but what you may not know is that for over a decade, Ironclad has worked with brands and individuals to create world-class films, series, podcasts, and ad campaigns. In fact, I've been working with Ironclad for the past few years. I was introduced to them on a project through the Navy SEAL Foundation. I've worked with them on a variety of projects, even up here in Montana, long before they proposed the idea of Change Agents to me. They're the best in their field. And I say that because there are plenty of people out there looking for the best, looking for the cream of the crop, looking for the top of the triangle. And if you're looking for that, you need to look no further than Ironclad. If you ever need media by way of film, a series, podcasts, or ad campaigns, they have you covered. You can reach out today and follow them anywhere at This Is Ironclad, the ampersand, and then This Is Ironclad, or visit them online, thisisironclad.com. Again, www.thisisironclad.com.